She was just another quiet passenger in seat 18C, until the F-35 Lightning fighters demanded her call sign. United Flight 847 cruised at 41,000 feet over the Nevada desert. Families dozed in their seats, business travelers tapped at keyboards, and a college student leaned toward the window with her phone capturing the endless horizon. That's when twin shadows swept across the aircraft's hull. Two F-35 Lightning II fighters, locked into perfect formation outside the port windows, sleek, angular, unmistakable. Gasps rippled through the cabin as passengers pressed against glass. Phones rose to capture what they assumed was a spectacular airshow moment. Before we continue this incredible story, tell me where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if these military aviation stories captivate you, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another mission. In seat 18C, Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Stone barely glanced up from her Sudoku puzzle. 45 years old, conservative navy blazer, auburn hair pulled into a professional bun, streaked with silver. To everyone around her, she appeared to be just another executive traveling for business meetings. To her, invisibility had become survival. What fellow passengers couldn't see was the faint surgical scar along her hairline from an ejection seat mishap years ago, or the titanium pins in her left wrist, a souvenir from the classified Phoenix program trials. They couldn't catch the subtle way her eyes tracked the Lightning fighter's precise positioning and flawless formation keeping. Instincts that hadn't faded since her days with the Air Force test wing. Her call sign back then had been direct and haunting. Phantom. The captain's voice crackled through cabin speakers, smooth, but carrying tension underneath. Ladies and gentlemen, you may notice our military escort today. Nothing concerning, just a routine training exercise. Please remain seated with seatbelts fastened. The explanation sounded professional, but Rachel knew better. Escorts didn't close formation this tight, and they didn't fly in synchronized pairs without specific purpose. As she watched, a third Lightning slid into view from the starboard side, canopy gleaming in the afternoon Sunday, perfect spacing, perfect discipline, too perfect. Across the narrow aisle, a tech executive muttered into his phone. "Yeah, 3 fighter jets right outside. Looks like some Top Gun action up here." Rachel suppressed the urge to correct him. The F-35 wasn't Hollywood spectacle. It was the most advanced multi-role fighter ever built. She had been present when the first prototypes lifted off from Edwards Air Force Base. Later, when Groom Lake made her indispensable to the Lightning's weapons integration systems. Now she sat reduced to penciling numbers into a Sudoku grid, while the machine she once commanded flanked her commercial flight. A flight attendant paused nearby, eyes wide with excitement, but forcing professional composure. Pretty amazing sight, isn't it? Rachel's response came clipped. They're skilled pilots. The attendant waited for elaboration, then moved on when none came. Rachel's pen hovered motionless. The puzzle forgotten. This wasn't an escort formation. It was an intercept pattern. Minutes stretched endlessly. The Lightning fighters never peeled away. If anything, they edged closer, like apex predators circling, waiting for a signal to strike. Then the intercom crackled again. This time, the captain's tone had shifted, formal, cautious, like a man walking across thin ice. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've received an unusual request from the military aircraft accompanying us. They would like to establish communication with a passenger in seat 18C. Every head swiveled. Phones lowered. Rachel Stone's pen froze completely. The quiet woman in 18C understood immediately. Her buried past had just been summoned back to 41,000 feet above the Nevada desert. Phantom was airborne again. The revelation hit the cabin like decompression. For most passengers, the 3 F-35 second had been an entertaining diversion, something to photograph, post on social media, maybe joke about later. Phones buzzed with amateur footage, lenses pressed to windows, whispered speculation about military exercises drifting up and down the aisle. For Rachel Stone, the sight was a scalpel cutting through old scar tissue. 18 years earlier, she'd watched a Lightning prototype lift from Edwards Air Force Base, still classified then, carving the California sky like it owned the airspace. Back then, she was one of only 8 personnel cleared to access its flight test data. Back then, she carried pride before the accident, before the medal in her wrist, before the Air Force medically retired both her body and her security clearance. Now, 3 Lightnings bracketed United Flight 847's Boeing 737 MAX at 41,000 feet, and they weren't departing. She closed her Sudoku book, eyes catching on a partially completed puzzle. The numbers seemed to mock her, a pattern she couldn't quite solve, much like her current situation. During testing, every sortie had generated intelligence reports, stamped with classification levels. Today, she wasn't collecting intelligence. She was the intelligence. Across the aisle, the tech executive spoke too loudly into his phone. 3 F-35 second man. Don't know what's happening. Must be some kind of training demonstration. Crazy timing, right? Rachel bit back her correction. The F-35 wasn't a demonstration aircraft. It was a fifth-generation multi-role fighter with stealth capabilities, advanced sensor fusion, and the ability to coordinate with ground forces in ways that redefined modern warfare. Those pilots weren't sightseeing. She glanced toward the lead fighter's canopy. Even at this distance, she caught the subtle tilt of a helmet. The flight leader wasn't monitoring the airliner. The pilot was watching her. The captain's voice returned, smoother but tighter. Ladies and gentlemen, the Air Force has joined our flight path temporarily. Standard operating procedure. Please continue to enjoy your journey. But escorts didn't maintain this proximity for standard procedures. When the formation subtly shifted, one lightning sliding forward, another aft, establishing attack vectors, her stomach provided the answer. This was no training exercise. The cabin's mood shifted perceptibly. Novelty drained away, leaving an undercurrent of unease. The college student in 15 Ampere lowered her camera and simply stared, new understanding dawning across her face. The adults weren't in complete control here. Flight attendant Maria approached seat 18C, eyes flicking nervously toward the fighters. Strange that they're still with us, she murmured. Usually military aircraft peel off after a few minutes. They have their reasons, Rachel said flatly, with absolute certainty. That calm disturbed Maria more than panic would have. Most passengers were either excited or frightened. This woman wasn't surprised at all. Minutes crawled past. The lightning fighters held their formation, patient as predators maintaining a hunt. Wi-Fi connections stuttered as passengers refreshed news feeds, trading speculation no one could verify. Then the intercom opened again. The captain's tone had evolved, formal, careful, like someone balancing on a tightrope. Ladies and gentlemen, we've received a direct request from the military aircraft escorting us. They need to speak with a specific passenger on board. Seat 18C. The cabin atmosphere cracked. Heads whipped around. Phones dropped into laps. Even the crying infant in row 12 hiccuped into silence. Maria froze in the aisle, gaze snapping from the window back to Rachel. The woman who had been invisible for 16 years now had 180 passengers staring at her. Rachel's finger hovered over the call button. 3 seconds, long enough to calculate the cost. If she pressed it, the life she'd constructed would evaporate in front of 180 witnesses. The small consulting firm in Phoenix, the carefully maintained anonymity, all gone. Outside, 3 lightning fighters waited for her decision. She exhaled once, steady and controlled, then pressed the button. The cabin gasped, collectively, and the mission she thought she'd escaped 18 years ago came hunting her again at 41,000 feet. This wasn't standard protocol. Fighter escorts didn't request conversations with civilian passengers. Someone had accessed her file, pulled classified records from Air Force archives that should have remained buried forever. When Rachel pressed the call button, the cabin reacted like she'd triggered an emergency flare. Heads turned, whispers sliced through the air. She doesn't look military. Why would they want her? Flight attendant Maria moved swiftly, almost as if she'd been anticipating this moment. Ma'am, Captain Rodriguez needs you in the cockpit immediately. Rachel slid her Sudoku book away and stood. The aisle became a gauntlet, every step cracking the cover identity she'd maintained for 16 years. Inside the cockpit, the reinforced door was already open. Captain Rodriguez, 55 years old, steady hands but unsettled eyes, gestured her forward. First Officer Chen tracked the instruments, though her attention kept darting back with sharp curiosity. I've been flying commercial for 28 years, Rodriguez said quietly. Never received a request like this. The flight leader insists on direct communication with you, says the authorization is secure channels only. Through the windscreen, the lightning fighters maintained formation, precise and deliberate, closing like a verdict being delivered. She caught Langley tail codes and felt her chest constrict. That squadron had been hers once, back during the early lightning trials. Did they provide a call sign? Rachel asked. Chen adjusted her headset. Lead pilot's call sign is Razor, requesting contact on military emergency frequency 243.0. The call sign hit her like electrical current. Major Jennifer Walsh, ambitious, precise, brilliant. The last time Rachel saw her, Walsh was still a captain, hungry for advanced fighter assignments. If she was leading this intercept, it wasn't coincidental. I'll take the communication, Rachel said. Rodriguez handed her a spare headset. She keyed the microphone. The channel hissed to life. United 847. This is Razor 1, requesting passenger authentication. Sierra 7 Delta 4. How copy? Her pulse spiked. She answered steadily. Razor 1. This is Stone. Copy you 5 by 5. Static. Then a voice she hadn't heard in 16 years. Older but still sharp with authority. Phantom. The cockpit froze. Rodriguez and Chen stared in disbelief. Need verification, Walsh said crisply. Call sign and final duty assignment. Rachel drew a controlled breath. Call sign, Phantom. Final assignment. Groom Lake Test Center. Project Officer. Lightning Weapons Integration Systems. Rodriguez blinked rapidly. Chen's hand slipped off the throttle controls, replaced by pure astonishment. Then Walsh's voice returned, urgent. Phantom, we have code red on Lightning Systems. We need your immediate consultation. Can you divert with us to Nellis Air Force Base? The words struck harder than severe turbulence. Code red meant catastrophic compromise of fifth-generation systems. If accurate, it wasn't just individual aircraft at risk. It was doctrine, deterrence, the entire backbone of American air superiority. I'm civilian now. No active clearance, Rachel responded. Walsh cut in sharply. Your clearance was reactivated 8 hours ago under emergency authority. You're the only one qualified to help. Chen whispered urgently. Captain, ATC just issued new routing instructions. Destination, McCarran International, Las Vegas. Military escort authorized all the way. Outside, the Lightning fighters tightened their formation again, guarding like apex predators securing their prize. Walsh's voice pressed through the static. Phantom, time is absolutely critical. Do you accept the mission? Rachel thought of her consulting firm in Phoenix. The quiet life she'd built from the ashes of her military career. It dissolved in a single breath. She pressed the transmit button. Razor 1. I accept. What's my transport to Nellis? We'll have a helicopter standing by. And Phantom, welcome back to the fight. The Boeing 737 MAX banked toward Nevada. For the first time in 16 years, Rachel Stone wasn't hiding from her past. She was being pulled back into the war. The Boeing 737 MAX banked hard left. Desert horizon tilting across the cockpit windows. McCarran International appeared on the navigation display like a beacon. Captain Rodriguez's grip whitened on the controls. United 847, cleared for immediate descent. Priority handling. Military escort remains active until further notice. Rachel, if Phantom again, whether she wanted it or not, watched the Lightning fighters shift formation. Their escort pattern wasn't merely protective anymore. It was tactical. A formation designed for intercepting threats. Trouble was already in the sky. In the main cabin, unease cracked into genuine panic. Phones rose despite regulations. Children cried. A mother whispered prayers. In Spanish. The tech executive from 14B muttered into his voice recorder. Fighter escorted emergency diversion. This is definitely going to be history. The college student in 15 Ampere stared directly at Rachel, phone trembling. Ma'am, are you with the CIA? Rachel didn't break stride. Finish your homework. Whispers erupted throughout the cabin. Her cover was completely destroyed. Back in the cockpit, First Officer Chen asked quietly, what exactly is Code Red? Rachel met her gaze directly. Catastrophic systems compromise. If the Lightning fleet is infected with malicious code, it can cascade through the entire network. That means U.S. air defense could be cracked wide open within hours. Rodriguez swallowed hard. And you're the person who can stop it? Her silence was confirmation enough. Las Vegas glimmered ahead, neon bleeding into desert dusk. McCarran Tower had cleared an entire runway, sweeping aside commercial traffic like debris. The descent felt surreal. Passenger aircraft didn't land with this level of priority. Lightning fighters shifting positions, engines burning hot. Then a fourth Lightning clawed upward from Nellis Air Force Base. The escort box sealed completely tight. This isn't escort formation anymore, Rachel muttered. They're preparing for hostile intercept. Another aircraft? Rodriguez asked tensely. What kind of intercept? No answer came. Just silence heavier than any turbulence. The Boeing 737 MAX slammed onto asphalt, reverse thrusters roaring at full power. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, crash trucks, military Humvees, black SUVs clustered at the terminal's far end. An MH-60 Black Hawk helicopter already spun at full power, rotor blades slicing through desert air. Your ride. Chen whispered, with a mixture of awe and fear. Then Razor's voice cut through radio static, clipped and urgent. Phantom. Secondary threat detected. Unknown aircraft. Not civilian, not friendly. Situation escalating faster than intelligence predicted. Full briefing en route to Nellis. Rachel unclipped her seatbelt. The consulting firm was gone. The war had reclaimed her. The aircraft rolled to a complete stop. FBI field jackets and Air Force security forces swarmed the isolated tarmac. Passengers gasped, faces pressed to windows. Maria's voice cracked over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated." But Rachel was already moving, eyes locked on the helicopter. If Razor was correct, the fight wasn't waiting at Nellis Air Force Base. It was already airborne. 3 seconds. That's how long Rachel Stone, Phantom C, needed before her brain locked back into combat analysis mode. The secure briefing room buzzed with encrypted communication feeds. But one fact chilled her to the core. Someone out there understood exactly how to exploit the F-35's most vulnerable systems. And they weren't guessing blindly. They knew. Captain Rodriguez handed back her headset, his voice steady, but the question sharp. "Ma'am, what exactly did you do in the Air Force?" She chose measured honesty. Test pilot, weapons integration specialist, the Lightning fighters in the sky. I helped design their combat brain. Words spread down the aisle like wildfire. The tech executive nearly saluted. The college student asked breathlessly, "Did you actually fly them in combat?" She said simply, "Among other missions," the understatement of several lifetimes. Her mind was already constructing threat analysis trees. Code red could indicate one of 3 scenarios: catastrophic software vulnerability, hidden design flaw, or worse, a hostile cyber attack. None were survivable for American air power. The helicopter waiting on the tarmac wasn't civilian transport. It was a blacked-out MH-60, rotors spinning at full combat readiness. 2 Air Force personnel snapped sharp salutes. Staff Sergeant Martinez sends Colonel Patterson's compliments. Immediate transport to Nellis. Flight suit waiting on board. Her hand returned the salute before conscious thought. Reflexes came easier than breathing. Below, the Nevada test and training range flashed past. Places she once knew better than her own neighborhood. Hangars thrown wide open. Ground crews running full sprint. Not a drill. Colonel Patterson waited on the flight line. Silver hair, eagles on his collar, an old colleague carrying new responsibilities and deeper worry lines. "Phantom, civilian life suits you well. Unfortunate we had to extract you like this. How severe is the situation?" "Severe enough that Pentagon reactivated your clearance in under 8 hours. That's unprecedented." Patterson introduced the crisis team. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Kim, Avionics Integration Specialist. Dr. Marcus Webb, Defense Intelligence Agency. Captain Lisa Morgan, 422nd Test Squadron Pilot. They wasted no time on pleasantries. Patterson activated the main display. 4 days ago, Lightning Squadrons reported intermittent sensor fusion failures. We suspected software glitches initially. Code came back completely clean, Kim added, but it only manifests above 35,000 feet, always during electronic surveillance missions. Captain Morgan leaned forward. Flight logs show phantom radar contacts, initially dismissed as ghost data, then we realized the pattern wasn't random. Someone's targeting our fusion channels systematically. Rachel stepped closer to examine the data. Her pulse spiked immediately. "Show me the waveform signatures." The traces illuminated the screen. Recognition hit like lightning. "This isn't electromagnetic interference. Someone's actively probing your Lightning fleet, not attempting to crash them, mapping their electronic architecture." The briefing room fell into heavy silence. Patterson finally asked, "How many aircraft affected?" 21 squadrons, from California to Virginia. Identical pattern signature. Rachel drew the inevitable conclusion. Then it's systemic penetration. Somebody understands F-35 architecture better than they should. That indicates either stolen specifications or a leak inside the program itself. Morgan's voice dropped to near whisper. "It gets worse. Same probing patterns detected on F-22 Raptors, even satellite constellations." Rachel didn't hesitate. Then this isn't electronic warfare preparation. It's comprehensive intelligence mapping. Someone's analyzing America's entire military backbone, layer by layer. Dr. Webb stated it flatly. "We need you to design countermeasures immediately. Tomorrow's test flight will deliberately trigger the interference, not with one aircraft, but an entire squadron." "That's handing them live combat intelligence," Rachel snapped. "You need layered defenses, multiple altitude brackets, ground-based electronic warfare stations, real-time spectrum analysis, synchronized data networks. Otherwise, you're flying blind into an ambush. She grabbed a marker, sketching rapidly across the whiteboard. Formations, counter-arrays, electronic warfare grids. When she finished, the implication was devastating. If the security breach wasn't foreign, it was internal espionage at the highest levels. Patterson paced, jaw muscles tight. If your analysis is correct, this isn't just code red, it's penetration of the entire defense establishment. Morgan delivered another blow. The squadrons hit hardest are training with NATO allies. Rachel's voice dropped. Then start with comprehensive background checks on every foreign national who's accessed Lightning systems in the past 24 months. Patterson nodded grimly. We'll initiate immediately. But understand, Phantom, if the leak runs as deep as you suspect, tomorrow's test flight won't just expose the enemy. It'll expose you as the person who can stop them. The war room fell silent, because if Phantom was correct, this wasn't just about Lightning fighters, it was about every advanced weapon system America possessed. And someone, somewhere, had dragged her back into the fight, for reasons she hadn't uncovered yet.